I'm Newt Gingrich, former Speaker of the House. And when 14 million Americans are out of work, we need a new president to end the Obama depression. The Obama administration is an anti-jobs, anti-business, anti-American energy, destructive force, and we shouldn't talk about what we do in 2013. The Congress this year, this next week, ought to repeal the Dodd-Frank bill. They ought to repeal the Sarbanes-Oxley bill. They ought to start creating jobs right now, because for those 14 million Americans, this is a depression now. The fact is, when you get into a mandate, it ultimately ends up with unconstitutional powers. It allows the government to define virtually everything, and if you can do it for health care, you can do it for everything in your life, and therefore we should not have a mandate. This campaign cannot be only about the presidency. We need to pick up at least 12 seats in the U.S. Senate and 30 or 40 more seats in the House, because if you are serious about repealing Obamacare, you have to be serious about building a big enough majority in the legislative branch that you could actually, in the first 90 days, pass the legislation. So I just think it's very important to understand, it's not about what one person in America does, it's about what the American people do, and that requires a senatorial majority as well as a presidency.
Actually, at the direction of Newt Gingrich, I was on the Ways and Means Committee, and I drafted the Contract with America Welfare Reform Bill. That was now the starting point.
One of the things the Congress should do immediately is defund the National Labor Relations Board, which has gone into South Carolina to punish Boeing, which wants to put 8,000 American jobs in South Carolina by fundamentally eliminating right to work at the National Labor Relations Board. Now, that's a real immediate threat from the Obama administration to eliminate right to work, and I think that it is fundamentally the wrong direction. If you believe in the 10th Amendment, we ought to let the states learn from each other. And the right-to-work states are creating a lot more jobs today than the heavily unionized states. First of all, you control the border. We can ask the National Guard to go to Iraq. We ask the National Guard to go to Kuwait. We ask the National Guard to go to Afghanistan. Somehow we would have done more for American security if we had had the National Guard on the border. But if you don't want to use the National Guard, just one last example. If you don't want to use the National Guard, take half of the current Department of Homeland Security bureaucracy in Washington, transplant it to Texas, Arizona, and New Mexico. You'll have more than enough people to control the border. But, you know, the Pakistani who immigrated to the U.S., became a citizen, built a car bomb, which luckily failed to go off in Times Square, was asked by the federal judge, how could he have done that when he swore an oath to the United States? And he looked at the judge and he said, "You're my enemy. I lied." Now, I just want to go out on a limb here. I am in favor of saying to people, if you're not prepared to be loyal to the United States, you will not serve in my administration, period.
Amen.
10 years after 9/11, our intelligence is so inadequate that we have no idea what percent of the Libyan rebels are, in fact, al-Qaeda. Libya was the second largest producer of people who wanted to kill Americans in Iraq. And I think that we need to think fundamentally about reassessing our entire strategy in the region. Once again, New Hampshire is proving why it's first in the nation as a primary, because the question is so good.
Governor?